Welcome everybody to Kraken Cast, the podcast where we talk to people in a variety of creative fields. Today we're going to be joined by Daydream TV. Daydream TV is an amazing content creator, a Twitch streamer who streams a variety of different games, and also a really amazing actor. One of their most known roles is a voice acting role in Life is Strange. They were the amazing Kate Marsh. So we're really happy today to have Daydream on the cast to talk about acting, to talk about streaming, everything else that might come up between. So without further ado, thank you for coming on the podcast today, Daye.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been kind of a chaotic beginning to the podcast. I know people who are listening to this audio weren't there for the technical stuff, so there's a little bit of chaotic energy. It's just because there's always technical difficulties in these sort of endeavors.
It's true. And I also bring my own chaos and technical issues with me wherever I go. So I just compounded the issue with my presence. So I apologize for that.
That's fair. We have chaotic gremlin energy here anyway. So it's just a lot of what a big ball of chaos we have going on. Normally I would kick things off and ask, about someone's background, what and this and that, but in your case, you're an actor. Like I mentioned at the start, you were the voice of Kate Marsh. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how doing voice acting work in video games or acting work in general led to deciding to also be a streamer, or how those kind of those paths correlated.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I mean, I did the voice work for Life is Strange back in like 2013, 2014, and I started streaming around 2017. And it's actually all because of our friend and foe, Tony Acts Out, who said, hey, you should stream your video game. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. And he was like, I will show you. So, love him or hate him, he's why I'm here.
That's awesome. It's always nice to kind of, we always get different kind of backgrounds as why people kick the go live button. But pretty commonality I've heard is a lot of people, whether it's their partner or a friend or a family member, encouraging them to kind of take that jump. So that's always kind of nice, because I feel like if you have somebody supporting you and jumping in, you have one of those things that can be hard to come by in streaming, which is the importance of a support network, like off the get-go.
Yes. And even more so with being in and a part of Life is Strange. Like, my first stream had, I think, like 500 people in it. And I was like, which was a very cool experience. And I wish it could come back. If all those people would like to come back to my stream someday, I'm still here.
Yeah, and I mean, that's also true too. Is obviously initially you have that kind of built-in rush of people, that kind of built-in thing, because all of us come at it from different. Some people have like no one, and they kind of build up from zero. Some of us can start really high because we have a network of people who know our work, and that can go down. It's like all those highs and lows in between. So it's really good, I think, obviously, to have that initial, although probably intimidating burst of for as much as there is to be said about streaming to like no people or a couple people, streaming to 500 people off the get-go is like, that's a whole different energy to deal with, I'm sure.
Yes, everything has changed so much since then. I mean, that was me just not knowing what I was doing. And like I said, I have my own technical difficulties, which is why I would have never thought to stream on my own. I had no idea what I needed or even how to begin. So with Tony, and Tony still helps me with the technological side of things. So, but it's wild to look back at my first streams and then look at them now and be like, wow, what was I doing?
I look back at my streams from like 2 months ago and go, what was I doing? So
That's true. That's true.
But I think it's fun. I think it's good to be able to look at growth and things like that over time, or, be able to look back and go, okay, I've actually come pretty far. Because sometimes when you're in it day in, day out, hitting a schedule, doing all these things, you don't feel the growth. So sometimes I will go back myself at least and watch some of those earlier streams or earlier clips and go, okay, there has been a leap in my ability to do things on a technical end or a creative end compared to then, because it's such an incremental thing. It's hard to feel, I feel.
Yeah, anytime you can look back at something and have it make you feel better about where you're at, because this career is so can be so hard on the mental health wise and hard to see growth. So anything you can do to look back and feel like, oh no, we're doing it is great.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there with this career. I mean, even if people approach it as a hobby, this hobby it's such a mercurial thing. Like you said, you could start out, you'll be like, oh my god, the voice actor of my favorite character for my favorite game is here, 500 people, and it can go cascading down, and there's highs and lows, there's these plateaus and everything kind of in between.
Oh, yeah.
And on top of that, we have to promote ourselves, we have to produce ourselves on a technological level, we have to do all the creative stuff. So we're producers, we're managers, we're all these things for ourselves. And even if we have other people, even if we have like other people on our team, at the end of the day, there's just so many different hats you wear. Compare it to like working in theater or working in TV, other backgrounds I have on the technical end, where there's teams. Even the smallest production of a theatrical play has teams of people. Whereas here it's just it's you and you figuring out everything from the content to the lighting to the presentation, making sure you're marketing yourself. So how, as somebody who obviously has worked in, is an actor, works in that industry, and also is doing the streaming thing where you have to basically wear all of the hats yourself, how do those kind of compare, and how do you handle like the time management needed to promote, to plan, to stream, etc.?
Such a good question. So here's the thing. I was like, I'm an actor, and you kind of have to do all the same things, like in LA and stuff, and trying to grow in TV and film. Like, you're doing all this stuff for free to promote yourself to try and get this career. You're taking classes, you're like taking headshots, you're submitting, you're auditioning, you're doing all these things. And so I looked at my very stressful life and said, let's add a second career on top of that that's just as hard. But in reality, I started, it was a hobby and part-time, and I don't know, I'm tired. I actually get jealous sometimes of some of my friends who I know stream, who have just in the last year or so gone full-time content creation. And I look at them and I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous of all of the like energy, motivation, and creativity you have. Because I've kind of been in the content creation game since like 2013, 2014. And I'm just tired. I'm like, I don't want to post another photo on Instagram. I don't want to edit another video. I've been doing this for 10 years. But it's all about figuring out work smarter, not harder, and which of those things you can do less of and which of those things you can pour time into. Or what I've been doing is just like, if I get in the mood to suddenly be like, I'm going to edit, I'm like, I'm going to honor that mood and do it. And then if I don't want to edit, I'm not going to force myself to. And it'll just get done when it gets done, is what I've been kind of doing, which may not thrill my streaming management, but, stuff gets posted eventually.
Yeah. And that's a lot, like you mentioned. Because a lot of people, in your case, you already have a career, a job, something you are doing, something that you've built up, and like you said, you're adding an entire other career on top of that. And I think that's something a lot of people can identify with, because even if your other careers in other job isn't in the creative field, a lot of people, when you start streaming, the ability to get to a point where this is the only thing you do, where you have the financial stability to do it, is hard. So everybody has to kind of do it with another job, another income on the side. So it's I think that's something that people don't see when is, like you said, it's kind of like being tired all the time, because you have all the things to do with streaming and you can't focus 100% on those, because you also have to work on your other careers, your other jobs, not to mention try to keep up with family and friends and social the things that keep us sane. Again, the reason why mental health can be such a pain, I feel like, in this path, is it's really easy to get wrapped up in the streaming world to the exclusion of doing things for fun or doing things with friends or taking time, and then all of a sudden you're not doing those things, and you're kind of like isolated from that world, and this becomes even more of a stressor. So I'm just curious about, again, kind of in that same balance thing, how do you maintain, or I guess none of us actually fully maintain it? Is there things you try to do to make sure that you have some piece of your life that is for, your partner, for your friends, for just for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a struggle, especially since we most of us stream from home. So it's very hard to like you have to set a boundary of like work time because you're always at work and you're always at home at the same time. So I had a really hard time like turning that off and walking away from that. I'm very grateful that actually my streaming space is set up in like a converted garage that's detached from the house. So I can actually like physically like close the door on my setup. That doesn't mean that I don't then just walk inside and go, oh my God, Tony, stream was so stressful today. I can't think, I need like, what am I doing wrong? And like continue to talk about it. But it's, I'm trying to find those moments to be like, okay, no, this is relaxing time. Like I'm going to force myself to relax, even if I don't want to, because I need to. There's such a pro-con thing with, having another job while streaming. Obviously, it's like so many people's goal is to stream full time, like you said. But what I've recently realized, and I've actually gone and got another or two other jobs that don't have anything to do with streaming, is like, when it is your sole focus, it's all you focus on. And then you can drive yourself wild, just constantly thinking about it because you have nothing else to distract you. Like I used to, work at a bar 7 hours, like 3 nights a week. And I would randomly get inspired for stream during that job. But now when I'm focused on it all the time, it's like square peg round hole sometimes of just like, I need to take my mind off of this because it's like those finger traps where like you keep trying harder and it keeps getting tighter and impossible to figure out something to change. So it's personal for everyone, the balance. But for me, I've actually gone out and found another job to focus on because I was like, I'm doing too much. I can't stop thinking about this and I need to stop thinking about this.
No, that's a really important thing to bring up. So obviously this is something I do full time for the most part, other than some on the side consultation work, and it becomes a full focus. But I also realize I am storytelling stories about my life, interesting things I've done. It is a as much life as I've lived, eventually a limited well. And I find myself even recently being like, I need to get out and do more things because I don't have new stories. It's like, friend of mine used to bring it up when I talked to them, like during pandemic. Every once in a while we'd realize it like 30 minutes into a conversation, but that clicked for me for streaming. We'd be 30 minutes into a conversation, be like, neither of us has really done anything because we just spent 30 minutes telling each other the exact same exciting life stuff because we haven't had new exciting life stuff. And then I thought about streaming. I go, oh, streaming's exciting, but I'm not getting out and doing things. So not only am I not breaking my focus on stream, when it comes to streaming, I'm not as fresh as I could be because I don't have new things in my head. I'm kind of stuck in this like past loop. And I think there's something to be said about, as a streamer, having those sources, because not everybody wants to share things from their life, but there is a certain parasocial element where people do want to know about the streamer. They want to know what you're willing to share, and having those experiences to share, I think, makes someone more engaging. So yeah,
and it's a trap too, because like content creation in general, because you have to draw a line, because it's so easy to, anytime you do anything, you're like, oh, but this could be content. Like, should I play this game? Like, for myself, I should play it for stream, right? Or like, can I play this? Should I record it for YouTube? Or like, just, oh, I should post this that I'm doing. And it's a very tangled web that you can get very tied up in. And I struggle with it constantly struggle with it, of like wanting to be more private and then being like, but other people share all their stuff and they grow. So what should I do? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Comparison, yeah. No, that's good. That's a good phrase. Comparison is in fact the thief of joy, because part of the job of content creation, a big creator I like is Ludwig, and Ludwig says something called the yoink and twist, which is true in content creation. If you see something that you like, that you think you can make your own, people take it and you make it your own. But at the same time, like if you start it's hard to like find fresh ideas, make them your own, and not then compare yourself to other people who've done similar things. Like you said, we don't want to be metrics focused. We want to be in the moment and enjoy it. But we are metrics focused because at the end of the day, everything is kind of dependent on these numbers.
Especially when it's your full-time job. Exactly. Yeah. And then everything, like I will tell my stream all the time, I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't mean to like sound like please give me money, but like if I don't hit this many subs, I can't pay rent. Like I need another job. So that is like a thing I think that is nice about having another job outside of streaming is not having that stress constantly on you, because I think it really affects then what you're doing on stream, or at least your mood or your attitude, even subconsciously, and it just adds so much stress, man. So much stress.
Yeah. And I'm very content minded. I believe the term people use is content brain. I constantly have everything. I don't want to have content brain, but everything I do, I have content brain for, which is, like you said, the tangled web we've, however,
a blessing and a curse.
That's, I mean, that's still there's something to be said about that. I go to food carts here in Portland. I'm eating lunch and my brain's like, let's get on YouTube. There's no like food cart reviews on Portland. I could make videos on that. Could I do IRL streams at this food cart park? Where would I set that up? Like I'm doing that while I'm doing just normal tasks. So I completely understand what you mean about like it's a blessing and a curse because it's tangled. Because when you create content, when you want to create engaging content, even the most mundane things can suddenly become, is there content here?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've gone, I'm swinging the other way. Like I used to post once a day on Instagram and make sure I was always doing stuff and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like, if I post once this month, I'm probably good, right? Like, but I'm also, we're also year 3 in a pandemic. I've been planning a wedding for 2 years, so it's a lot.
No, that's oh yeah, multiple jobs on top of planning a wedding, on top of, like you said, we have passed that marker as of the 30th of last month, where we are in the third year of new normal, right? Whatever that might mean. Yeah, it's a lot. But kind of something I want to talk about, kind of circling back to numbers, because it's hard not to consider numbers. So like I said, when it comes to things like being full-time and things like that, and you're mentioning making Twitter posts and things like that, because ideally the point is I will stream the same if I have 25 people, if I have 250 people, things like that. And that's well and good. But at the end of the day, to get away from what you mentioned, which is I don't want to constantly put pressure on the community. Like I do make it known, like, hey, I really appreciate the support. The support helps me. The support is what allows me to go deeper and deeper into this content thing. But obviously everybody wants to get to a point where those numbers support sponsors and those sponsors support income. So you can put less pressure on your community. And so it's hard not to worry about the numbers of it all. And I kind of want to talk about that also because I feel like that's another toll on mental health when it comes to streaming. Because you mentioned, like, obviously looking at like Solely Gnome and Twitch Tracker and stuff, obviously your stream started out with a huge number of people because here's the voice of Kate Marsh streaming, and then eventually it kind of stables out and to pretty good numbers, like compared to most of Twitch averaging 70 people, 60 people, 60, 70 most months is what you're like month averages, which is really good. But at the same time, you started with such a high, and not good enough, right? And I think that's I like to talk about though, because like for me, starting out like 5 people, that's awesome. 20 people, like there's something about when your number gets high and you have these higher numbers, when you do look at those numbers and you get used to that high number for just even a little bit and it drops down, it probably is not that your content is bad, but it's easy to go, what did I do wrong? Like, that is like my number one struggle with my mental health is an inability to separate myself from the data of my streams. I will like look at my numbers and be like,
I'm not doing anything different than X, Y, and Z streamer who's just being themselves and chatting and playing variety games, but they have 100+ people and I can't even make partner. What's wrong with me? Why don't people like me? What am I doing wrong that doesn't draw people in? And then it becomes like, then it's like this dark, slippery slope of this awful thinking that I hate getting caught in, and I get caught in it all the time.
And I mean, logically, you can look at things, go, people are going back to work. People have this. Like, there's so many other. This game is now popping off, or this thing's happening. There's so many factors that are outside of our control as streamers. But yeah, again, it comes down to comparison and self judgment. Because yeah, you see your number at one thing, then it goes low when you do something, and then you start questioning, well, like you said, what am I doing wrong, or why is this not working for me? And it's such a stressful thing. And I always like to talk about the mental health of it, because I think like it's easy to get lost in that. I get lost in that all the time, because sometimes it took me a long time to even get somewhat near the point where sometimes I go, I'm doing something new and 60 people are here with me. And yes, that's a dip from my average, but anybody else doing this would be ecstatic to have that many people. It's trying to think of the people that are there versus the people that aren't there. But it's hard because, again, you don't want to, but you start tying it to self-worth, especially because Twitch and streaming is gamified, as I say. There is this, you can make the most amazing content, but Twitch wants these exact number dots to get the check mark, like you said. And, so for someone like yourself who would like to get to partner, because partner doesn't necessarily instantly make your content better or make you grow faster, and it opens doors.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, ugh. Descent into madness, really. It's it's hard. And then like I always have Tony like whispering in my ear, and he's like, if you would just stick to one game, you'd probably partner in a few months, or like just play ESO for like 6 months, like you'll be good. And I'm like, I don't want to do that, Tony.
That's usually we wait till the Q&A to bowl something from chat, but I saw something that's really important, which is in chat there you see Dog Party Guy said, Daye right now has quality over quantity, but hopefully that slides up again soon, meaning the quantity. And I think there is something to that gets lost, which is Twitch is a very competitive space, and it's easy it's easy to feel like that competition is like a soccer game, like a baseball game, like a sports game, where I am one team and the other streamer is the other team and I am competing with them. So it's very hard to realize that the competition actually it's a competitive space, which means it's a self-competition to improve your quality, because even if the numbers aren't there, when you do get a raid, or when a post pops off, or a TikTok pops off, or whatever brings people into your stream, if the quality there, if the content's there, that's the better chance to get people to stick around. But I think it's easy to get lost in, again, we've already talked about it a bunch, so I don't want to harp on it too much, that comparison game where we compare ourselves to others and feel like they're the competition, whereas I found the true competition is in focusing on that quality and that self-improvement. Because if you get too lost in the comparison game, then you lose sight of like, how can I improve my setup or my lighting, or what can I bring to the table that's entertaining, versus getting too lost in the what are they doing, which sometimes for some people can go down that dangerous slope of blaming other people for one's numbers. Which you see a little too much in like Twitch, Twitter spaces.
Yes. Yes. And I'm such a firm believer in like we all rise together, and like we rise up together. And like I feel that way about acting, like with my acting friends. And I've seen it, like I've seen friends of mine who like grew exponentially when, others took them in under their wing and stuff. And that helps, because I think we both know that Twitch doesn't have like the best like visibility or like algorithm to find new people. Like it's hard. That's why we all have to post on YouTube and TikTok and other places to try and like get more audience in. And I'm really trying hard, and again, hard to do with all the things I'm currently working on, wedding, etc. But like, I really want to focus more on collaborations and like streaming with other streamers and getting to know other communities and just like getting to know each other, so that we all become one large community together, instead of feeling like were competition. Like I very much like that more family feel of like, oh, like, my favorite streamer I usually watch isn't on, but like I know X, Y, and Z are also awesome streamers that they're friends with, so let's check them out. Like that's the world I want to live in.
And I think that's honestly the meta, to use the term, because everyone uses the term meta for what game or what activity is currently meta, but the true meta, I think, is what you're mentioning. We have a saying that we took from a fellow streamer we love named Reishi Spores called community, not competition.
Yeah.
And that's based on that theory, though, because if you look at the biggest streamers or bigger streamers, you'll notice it's collaboration, but it's not just like occasionally playing games. They interact with each other. They get on calls with each other. So you see that. And then, yeah, when the big streamer, and that's how I did discover streamers like that. The streamer I watch isn't on. People I normally watch at this time are not on. Oh, weren't they? I've got to know this person through this other person's streams, and that's how I ended up following and checking them out. I think there is something to be said about. It can be difficult to network and navigate that, but there's something to be said about putting together kind of a cloud of streamers who you have similarities with, who you get along with, who you can share in those collaborations with to build each other up. Because I think you're exactly hit the nail on the head, especially in a lot of spaces, is that's actually what eventually helps rise people up. That's true networking versus like the the kind of pseudo networking you hear about.
Absolutely. And I struggle with that too in a weird way because I'm so shy. Like I've been brought in by streamer friends to like a group game or something with other streamers whose communities I admire, but like I get so shy and anxious when it's like, a group of 10 for Among Us. And so I don't really, and they all know each other already. And so like I have a hard time like connecting with other people. And so like that's why when you were like, oh, do you want to be on my podcast, I was like, heck yeah, like let's have a conversation. I love hanging out with other people. And I think you answered my tweet because I want to start bringing people on my stream to teach me like random skills that have nothing to do with video games, and I'm so excited to do that eventually after the wedding. Because I'm excited to learn new things. I'm excited to like hang out with people who I've just chatted with on Twitter. And I think that my community will really love learning along with me because they're a bunch of nerds and I love them for it.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said about that because I got close in the ESO directory with a streamer named Pain in the Axe. Pain checked me out when I was smaller.
Pain.
Got to know Pain. I love Pain's sense of humor. Thanks to Pain, when I was doing a subathon also, Tony had rated me, so that was the first interaction with Tony. But thanks to Pain, I ended up doing a couple games with Pain and Tony and Fangrush once, Forlorn and stuff. And then because of that, Tony asked me to be in a game. That's the only time I've ever gamed with you on stream, because it was like Izzy Winks, you, Tony, and me. But I think that shows like that collaborative spirit because of my interactions with Pain. I got to know Tony because of playing those games with Tony and Pain. I got invited to play Phasmophobia again with Tony, but this time with like you and Izzy around Halloween. So like it leads to connections. And then because I had that experience with you, it made it easier for me. Because again, I also get lost in the anxiety of reaching out to people I don't necessarily know, even if I've interacted with them a bit. But having had even a simple gaming experience made that easier. So I think that again builds that whole like there's a lot to collaboration versus trying to view everybody around you as like a threat. And there's plenty of streamers I know who have grown in a self-contained bubble, but there's something to be said about the community of it.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I saw the same thing happen with Tony. I mean, he really grew because he was streaming like on and off while I was streaming for years to like 10, 15 people, just like he hadn't really like found his groove. And then he started doing like characters. And then once he started in on the ESO thing, and then Mercy and Fang found him, and it was all over. And they helped blow him up. And like, I think the ESO community is really good at that. Since it is a game that y'all play together like in game with, it's a lot easier, I think, because of that, to then reach out to those other streamers because you're already collaborating in game, even if you're not streaming with them. And I've seen it happen for a lot of you guys, that it just works out really well and the community embraces each other, and it's great. And because like when you guys raid each other, because the chat is watching the same game, I think it's really easy for them to stay and be like, well, I already know this game. I love this game, watching this game. I don't know this person, but because I love this game, I'll stick around a little longer. And there's like a really nice retention and growth there. So I think that all y'all in the ESO community do a beautiful job at that. So snaps and claps.
ESO definitely. There's other communities like that too. I feel like MMOs and some other games too as well, but MMOs have that space. It's a type of environment where people are usually playing the game themselves. A lot of people watch streamers second monitor up while they're also playing the same game they're playing. So what you mentioned there, I have found that raid retention, when somebody rates me when I'm doing other games, the retention's there. There's always a fall off, but when people raid me who are also doing ESO, there's a fall off, but the fall off is less than what you would see. So there's something about certain spaces where people are a little more inclined to like stick around due to, like you said, the game. And I think that's important to bring up. It was brought up a few times, is there's the double-edged sword in every choice you can make in streaming. And there is the tying yourself to one game. That's what I did. My growth is, I was originally a just chatting streamer. I wanted to do IRL stuff, but of course COVID hit. So it's when I went into ESO, and that's where I experienced the bulk of my growth. So tying yourself to one game does have the downside of, if the game is down, you're down. If the game is up, you're up. And your lifeblood being tied to one game is somewhat scary. And then you do have to eventually branch into other things to maintain and not be solely tied to the game. Otherwise you end up like a lot of my friends who streamed WoW, who are doing pretty well when that game did what it did. But then there's the growing in variety like yourself, which has the downside of not being known for one game. There's X amount of people who get to know you, like your personality, stick around for your stream. The ride or dies, and whatever you do, they'll stick around, but they're less common than the people who really like you. And if you are the one who is streaming the game they watch, you're the one they'll watch. But if you're not streaming that game, hey, they only have so many hours in a day, they really want to watch their game. So you have the benefit of already having a community as you grow that is used to you doing different things, and that's an amazing thing, because that becomes the struggle for people who are tied to one game. When we start to branch out into other things, is but again, the downside is I feel like the growth is slower, because somebody might be watching you play, because you played, again, as a variety streamer, variety games. If I pull up like the games you've just played in 2022, the remastered Life is Strange, obviously, you're Kate Marsh in that, but you've played Deep Rock Galactic, Elden Ring, Words on Stream, Dragon Age Origins, the list goes on. And so I'm curious about that, about the pressures that you might put on yourself to decide to attach to one game simply to maybe get to that checkmark spot, or the want to stay true to like the variety streaming path, even if it might present additional hurdles to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very stubborn, because like all the pressures have been outside. It's been like Tony and like other streamer friends that are like, if you just stuck to one game, this would be easier. And I'm like, but I don't want to, then I'd be bored. And so I've stubbornly clung to the variety. So it's just, man, it's just a wild west for me. I don't know. I very much have stuck to my guns of wanting to stay variety, because I couldn't figure out what game I would possibly want to play and like sit down and just make my game. I couldn't come up with one. So I was like, I literally don't know. The only thing I think I could maybe do is like, I could maybe do Stardew Valley for like 3 months, and then I'd probably be sick of it. But again, I am trying to like shake things up when I come back from streaming after wedding and honeymoon. And while I'm not going to stick to one game, I am going to try and steer things even more community based, because I feel like that's when my stream thrives. Is I do have community day every Sunday, and it goes great because I'm always really talking with my chat and paying attention to chat, but then I'm also playing games with them, and many of them, and we all have a great time. So that's why I'm hoping to like bring in the new kind of like teaching streams for all of us, and then I want to stick to maybe just more community-based games for more than just one of the days, and switch up the game, but always make sure I'm playing with viewers. And just try it out because I enjoy it. Everyone in my chat seems to enjoy it, so I'm gonna try it.
I think that's a great approach, and I think there's a lot to be said there about game selection, if it's thing and variety. And I think the approach you're taking is great because as I've researched, as I've branched into other things, I think at the end of the day, through lines are what becomes important in variety, whether it's I start my stream with just chatting, we do some react content to some videos here, or I start my stream with this sort of thing, or like you said, you're bringing in this whole new show where you're having other streamers come on, which we'll get into that a little bit more because I think that's such a clever and awesome idea to teach different skills, doing more community things, like having through lines so that even if it's not the same game, because I think the trap, the Yu-Gi-Oh trap card of variety streaming is there's no way, unless you're already big, to really get traction in the hotness. Like playing Elden Ring is great, but your community is not going to grow in Elden Ring probably all that much, because the game's so saturated. And I think people can fall into that variety streaming trap. And just, you can still play those games, but if that's you're always bouncing to the most popular game, you get lost in that huge shuffle since the largest streamers are in there. So I think having a focus on unique content such as the streaming content, the learning content, and also more community things mixed in with when you want to play those bigger, more popular games is the way to go. Because I do, when I talk to my friends who do variety, they're like, they generally have stuff where they try, the ones who've done well have to try to avoid going just with the hottest game because otherwise you're just way down there, because the 50,000 viewer streamers are at the top, and then getting down to somebody who even has 50 people is usually not a scroll many make.
Yeah, and I always come up with these great ideas of like, this is gonna be the through line, and then I just can't stick to them. I just get too excited. Like really right now, what I say I am is I'm a community streamer focused on story-based RPG and community games, and that is the majority of what I play. But then like, you know, and I actually really like playing, because I like missed like a decade of gaming basically when I was in like high school and college. I was a nerd and studying. So I like going back and playing these popular games from like 2012, 2013, 14 that everyone knows and has played at least once, but I'm clueless. I find that's when it's the most fun because chat knows what's going on. They're excited for me to come up to certain things. And there's this like a really good energy. But then, you know, then Resident Evil Village comes out and you just gotta play it. And so then you're no longer only playing old like hits, you know? So it's hard.
Yeah,
it's hard sticking to a through line.
Yeah. Finding balance is, I mean, at the end of the day, that's the hardest thing. Because I can say anything I said about variety and branching out, but I put hundreds of hours into Elden Ring on stream because I wanted to.
It's fun.
It's fun. It's what I want. And I love From Software. And
and it's like also a double-edged sword when you have an amazing community who says things like, it doesn't matter to me what you play, I'm just here for you. And I'm like, I know that, but like, how do we get at least 10 more people in here with that same mindset? Because all we need is 10 more people.
And that's the thing. That's the thing, is it's getting people in there, because once people are attached, there's a big chunk of them that, like I said, I consider myself blessed, because like I started looking at things ever since I started looking at numbers that way. When I do different things, I'm like, oh, I'm at 50% my numbers when I do ESO. Instead of looking at it at a 50% drop, I went, wow, I'm going into a game with that many people. That's most people fresh into a game would have like 3. So I can, but what things can I do? Because if I don't get people watching my streams and interacting with me, they'll never know if I'm their cup of tea. I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but how do I get them in to have an initial glass of tea with me to see? Because if they are people that like to go with it, like to go with the streamer once they identify with them. But like you said, it's about getting those people in, because there is a lot of ride or dies, but it's the eternal struggle. And then when you're at that point, then you're like, and that's sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say you like it's just great having that like core group of people that like is gonna support you no matter what you do, and it's amazing. But then those same wonderful people, you're like, so what do you think I should do to like fix this problem I feel like I have? And they're like, they're the ones that are there. Like they're the wrong people to be asking. Like they're already there. Like it's amazing. Like to have them there.
It's a
I'm
focus
like, everyone
group
just
of
grab
people who
one
love you.
friend. Let's go.
Yeah, it's hard to ask a focus group of people who love you already. Like, what should I do differently? And they're like, I
don't know.
like
This
it.
is great.
All of us are on board. I don't know. Yeah, it's
Exactly. So I feel bad because I try and be really transparent with them, being like, here's why I'm frustrated. But it's like none of their faults, because they're the ones that are always there supporting me. So it's like now I just feel like I'm complaining to these poor people who don't deserve to be complained at. And then I get in my own web of like, oh, now I'm annoying and now I'm bothering them with my problems. And
yes, the overthinking anxiety cycle of it all. But yeah, because you want to be transparent, you want people to know what's going on. You also don't want to, like I said, you still want to provide the best content you can because they're there. They love what you do. Like you don't want to only do that. So yeah, exactly. It's the push and pull. I do, before we talk about anything else, I want to make sure we're making time for it because part of the reason of the podcast is for people to talk about really cool, awesome things that they do on stream and have coming up. And you mentioned something, I responded to a tweet about it, but can you talk more about these learning streams, having streamers come on? Because I think it's such a clever and cool and unique idea. I'd love for people to be able to hear about that who are here live, who watch this later on YouTube, or even listen on like Spotify later.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to start a segment on my stream, probably sometime in June or a little after, where I probably once a month, bring a streamer on my stream, like kind of like this, how we're chatting, but they come with a skill or a hobby that is something that they do in their off time when they're not streaming, and they teach me and they teach chat and we learn together. And I'm so excited because it actually all started with a streamer who has been hanging out in all my Dragon Age streams who knits, and it's like, I'd love to teach you to knit sometime. And I was like, let's do it on stream. We both stream. And then I was like, that's so fun. Like if anyone in chat wants to learn, they can grab the materials too and learn along with us. And it just really brings those warm fuzzy community vibes that I already love so much. It just kind of expounds on those. And so I haven't ironed out all of the fiddly details, but that's the basic gist of it. And in a similar vein, I want to start doing more get back into cooking streams because I haven't done one in a long time. And I have this beautiful international audience, and I want them to suggest like meals like from where they're from that I try and make, and we'll see how poorly or well I do it. And then I get to try it, and then, we can have a family meal together or something like that. So I'm really trying to boost up the community XP. And
then me being very content brain, that also is great because I feel like that is a core component thing that versus looking at an entire length of stream to figure out where my video is. If I were you, I'd be like, oh, I know where my YouTube video is in that, provided you wanted to turn it into a YouTube video. So I always look at things like that and go, it's great for the community. It could be great for external content. Because again, like you mentioned, Twitch is not great for visibility. They try various things, but at the end of the day, TikTok or YouTube or Twitter, there's all these sources that are, as they say, evergreen content where taking the time to be able to do it is difficult, but having it out there makes you discoverable all the time. My YouTube channel has less than 400 people on it. It's very baby, very, very newborn in terms of YouTube, but even that has brought people in who just happened to catch one of those YouTubes. So like that tiny bit like gives that kind of concept. And that's where I kind of wanted to go, is like, I love the concepts you have and just kind of talking about like, you've already talked about the difficulty of like making those Twitter posts, those Instagram posts, and those videos, but just kind of talk about like what it's been like trying to maybe get content on evergreen platforms for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and I like how you're putting it. It's kind of like that work smarter, not harder thing where you're like, oh, I know exactly where this would be. Because yeah, right now most of my YouTube content is just my playthroughs of Life is Strange because that's why people look for me, or and that's how people find me.
Right.
Which has been like another thing of like, okay, well, like, how do I branch out? Like, this is a wonderful community, but like, let's branch out from this community, and that's been an interesting thing to navigate as well.
Yeah, it's the work smarter, not harder. But yeah, it's definitely a kind of a complex thing. But again, I really love the idea that you have for those streams that involve your community more, cooking streams,
Thank you.
learning streams.
I'm
I
very
think that's
excited.
really interesting because yeah, like you said, a lot of people will find you because of your work on Life is Strange, as Kate Marsh, but your general streams aren't necessarily dedicated fully to Life is Strange. They can't be. There's only so much Life is Strange.
I know. I'm like, as much as some of them would love to watch me play it over and over again, I don't think I could handle it.
Yeah. And they're not like dedicated fully, like they're not like these like streams are dedicated to like voice acting and stuff. So doing I think a variety of community things to help like build your brand outside of just the acting thing is really important because they might find you through Life is Strange, but you want them when they stop in to be engaged with what you're doing. And I think community engagement's really key. I think it's overlooked a lot. I think people look at huge streamers and see if you are Shroud and you are cracked at all the shooting games you play, people will watch you just because you are super good. Or if you are X giant streamer, because you are big, people will watch you just because you are big. And it starts being like, how good am I at this game? Or everybody
no one's watching me because I'm the best at the game I'm playing. No one is watching me for that.
And I think too much pressure gets pushed on what is the value I bring without looking at the value of community. I think community is such an important part of growth. And even with larger streamers, even with chats that go really fast, there are some that are still focused on community, able to keep up with that. And I think it's really great that you are so focused on community because I think people get so lost in what game am I going to be cracked at, or what game am I going to play that I'm going to be good at? Like so lost in providing value that way that it gets lost how important and how much a good community can help you grow, but not just grow, but also just like give you like, again, when we talk about mental health, having people who are going to watch you no matter what you play, who are constantly talking and engaging with you is such an important thing to like get through. I feel like those plateaus.
Oh yeah, they always say nice things about me, and it's awful. But you know, no, I'm just kidding. I have a hard time accepting compliments, but no, it's very. I love being a community-based streamer because it makes me feel like I'm doing this for a greater purpose, a greater reason, and I personally find that really fulfilling when I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm just, quote unquote, sitting down and playing video games on the internet, but I've worked so hard to build this community where I know people feel safe. I know people feel comfortable. I know people feel supported. And so unlike acting, where I always felt really selfish because you don't have that relationship with the people consuming your content. It felt like a very selfish profession in a lot of ways, and this I feel much more fulfilled in that aspect. I'm like, no, I know I'm at least, it might be just an itty bitty bit of good in my itty bitty corner of the internet, but I'm putting some good out into the world, and I am proud of that.
Yeah, that's important, is being able to feel proud. I mean, of the work you do, being able to look at the content you provide, and the things you do, and be like, I am proud of that. I am happy with my reasons for doing that. So just a couple things here, because kind of as we kind of wind down the interview, I want to make sure we cover. I'm just curious because we've talked a lot about mental health and things like that. Something that I've talked about with almost everybody who's been on the podcast, because I feel like it's a consistent and constant amongst, I'd say 90% of people I've had on the podcast, is imposter syndrome. Or yeah, I'm just curious if you've experienced that. For people who don't know, imposter syndrome is when things are going well, feeling like the other shoe is about to drop, feeling like you don't deserve the success, the compliments, anything like that come kind of comes your way. I'm just curious if you do experience things like imposter syndrome when it comes to like streaming, or maybe any of your other like careers in life.
Oh yeah, totally. I 100%. I don't know anyone who does. I feel like everyone does, no matter what your profession is. You're like gonna come up against it at some point. Yeah, it's really hard, especially being someone who I had this great success in booking Life is Strange, but like I haven't really done anything since. And man, does that hurt when like sometimes when it's like, oh cool, like still on the riding the coattails of this thing that's almost 10 years old. What a loser I am. Like it's so hard not to feel that way. It's fine. I have therapy. I go to therapy. We're good. I have people to tell me to shut up, I'm being dumb, and that I'm awesome. You gotta have those people in your life that know when to tell you just to shut the heck up and stop saying those things.
That's very, very fair. And I just like to bring it up because I feel like because there's a lot of people who listen to this who aren't, but there's also a lot of people who watch the podcast, listen to the podcast, who are streamers or getting into streaming themselves. So I like to bring up these things because these are things that everybody I feel feels regardless of your size or how long you've been at. Like you said, you've been at this for a lot of years. But it's not just something, because things like technical difficulties also, I just like to always reiterate, it's like, I mean, we had technical difficulties at the start of this podcast. My camera was messing up. I couldn't get Discord to work.
Every day. Every darn day. I've literally had technical difficulty streams where something has been working so poorly that I have thrown my like windows up on my stream because I have people in my chat much smarter at computers than I am, and I go, help me. And I have watched my numbers go higher during those streams. Because everyone's like, oh, what are we doing? What are we fixing? What's going on? And I'm just engagement, like, someone help. Yeah. Like, it's broken again. I'm very well known for that. And I think every streamer is. I've yet to meet a streamer who's like, oh, me? Technical difficulties? Oh, yeah. I don't know her. No, we all have it. And I think everyone's chat is, ready for it. Except, for X, Y, and Z massive streamer who now has like a team running their streams, Well,
and even they can have technical issues. I've watched plenty of bigger streamers also still run it. It's even with teams it can be a hassle. But yeah, I just think it's important to bring up that these things exist. But I think also bring up that the engagement you get from chat, because at the end of the day, I think that's what makes, this is just a personal anecdotal theory that makes people watch streamers, is they find something that they identify with. Everybody, whether you stream or not, can identify with technical problems and want to help somebody fix those technical problems. I think the same thing I think that's the engagement with people who watch things like Elden Ring, because if you play FromSoft games, even if you don't, you can identify with something being a challenge that you just throw your head at the wall until that wall somehow breaks under the force of your skull. Or whatever the case is, people like these things that they can identify with, whether it's they play the game themselves or not. So I think that's something not to. It's good that you don't shy away from it too, because I think that's something sometimes people might do, is shy away from it. But we're all human, and when people can identify with you, it actually does help forge better connections, I've always found. And the last thing I want to talk about, because you're before a couple quick fire questions, is you're such a community driven streamer. I like to talk about basically cultivating communities, because they learn from watching each other. Like when you go into a chat for the first time, you watch how the chat interacts with the streamer, how the streamer interacts with the chat. And it kind of, for most people, some people don't notice the lining across the line, but for the bulk of people who stay with the line, you kind of set your own boundaries. Because you've mentioned your partner, Tony, go into Tony's stream, it's going to be a hostile environment, but that's the fun, right? You engage with it because
we cultivated two very different streaming environments, Tony and I.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up Tony's, because it's a contrast. So I want to talk about like cultivating that community and basically kind of guiding and helping set those boundaries, which eventually your community kind of maintains those boundaries and helps you keep those, but setting that kind of like boundaries that like makes you have the community you want that represents you. Because honestly, chat is part of our content, because when you come into a stream, part of a stream is you can interact directly with the streamer and the other people watching the streamer. So I'm just curious about cultivating your community and what that's been like and how you've done that over time.
I've been very lucky, blessed, that my community came out of a cornerstone of the Life is Strange community, which was already a very compassionate, kind, respectful. I mean, there's bad eggs everywhere, but for the most part, everyone that came through from that community, you know, was coming from a place of like, like maybe of seeking out a safe space on the internet. Like Life is Strange was a safe space for them. And I'm like, okay, now I'm a continuation of that. So I did get very, very, very lucky in that. So I think maybe sometimes even the games you start with can set the tone because it's the type of people that are fans of those games. So that is certainly something. And then I just always made so sure to ask my chat to make sure they welcomed everyone and like said goodbye to anyone who said they were leaving. Like that was super, super important to me starting out. I was like, I want you to welcome everyone. I want you to say goodbye to people. Like I want everyone to feel welcome. So those are like the two main things for me. And but you know, it's also, it's hard to know what kind of community you will bring in from a game, because I've also played plenty of Dead by Daylight and had people come in who were awesome, that were big Dead by Daylight fans. So, you know, a horror killing game versus, you know, Life is Strange and all its emotions. Like you can't always tell, but I also like your mods are like your quarterbacks, right? Like they set the tone as well. So as long as everyone is like respecting the mods, respecting each other, and you're, like you said, you the streamer set the tone. Like, you know, I'm not someone who, like, there are plenty of fantastic streamers who are hilarious, who are like known for bashing trolls or just like bashing rude people in their chat. We never really get, I'm like, knock on wood, trolls or rude people. Like they just don't even find us. And when the trolls show up, it's just an insta ban. And so it's just this very, it's a line that seems to even be just like intrinsically known. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that line's a lot of, again, unless somebody's coming in with the intention to be toxic and they just want to come in brazen and brash without watching, people kind of will look, and I mean that might be a token of why they stick around. Maybe they like a harsher streamer, like, this isn't for me. But maybe some people are like, oh wow, I found a Dead by Daylight streamer whose community is actually, you know, welcoming. I don't know the full community for Dead by Daylight, but what I'm saying is,
either. But
I'm saying the cultivation of it. I think a lot of people lurk and watch, and part of it might be watching the stream, and part of it might be going like, okay, wow, this is a community where I don't have to get good or whatever the case is.
Yeah. I definitely don't. My chat sasses me. I don't sass my chat. And sometimes back to mental health stuff. I'm like, am I not do none of my videos go viral because I'm nice? Like, what do I need to be? I'm not going to just be mean just for the views. I don't understand the internet.
You can explode. But again, anecdotally, not using the name, a friend of mine who's streamed for a long time blew up initially and then went back down and had to regrow because they kind of blew up due to some drama, and then they realized like, this is not the community I want, because everybody is coming here with the drama. They're bringing, and I don't want to be talking about other streamers or creating drama just because I had this thing blow up where I had some drama. So they had to like kind of break their stream down and rebuild it up. When if they had just never done that, they would have probably stayed more successful. So just completely anecdotally, like if you don't want to be deep in that space, like, it can blow you up. It can also have, again, everything's this double-edged.
What you gotta, it's all, you have to know what you're comfortable with, what you want, what makes you happy, because if you don't, that streaming will eat you alive.
God. Yeah, and it's also important because, again, it's an extension of you. Again, it's an extension of Payne's chat, just streamers we've mentioned, to spam emotes because the EDM is blaring and he's taking fat rips off the vape and PvPing down. It is a staple of a Tony chat to kind of talk back and get beheaded because it's the Toniest to think. It's you're more community driven, so it's more of like the space where you can come together. And I think that is important. That's why I always like to talk about the community of it all, because
Yeah.
people's communities reflect them. And I think that's important, because if you try to mimic someone else's community and it's not you, and I guess at the end of the day, all streaming comes down to, like, if you're true to yourself, it could be more of a struggle. You might not blow up like you mentioned, but then you can get in that space, like you said, where if you're forcing yourself to play one game because you're going to grow more, then you're going to get bored. And that's going to translate to you maybe not wanting to stream as much. Or if you force your community to be a way that's not true to you, then you're not going to maybe like your community that much. And then that's going to make you not want to stream. So, like, I think there are a lot of these things we've talked about, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong or expand on it, kind of tie back to making sure that you're being true to yourself. That way you're not forcing yourself into a place that's going to burn you out or make you kind of view streaming as that job where you want to call in sick.
Right. Yeah. And like you can exacerbate a certain part of your personality. Like, you know, I try to present the more wholesome side of myself on stream to eliminate making anyone feel uncomfortable, you know, but there's like stuff and ways I act off stream that, like, you know, you might only see when I like crash Tony's stream, or like, you know, I just like am around my friends, but I don't feel like I'm ever being untrue to myself on stream. I'm just sticking to a certain part of my personality. And to the point I made fun of Tony at one point, because I was like, you're so mean and horrible to your community, and they're all still somehow like a good community. Like I was like, how did you do that? He's like, I don't know. I didn't do it. Like, so he's an anomaly. Like, I always love when I get people who I recognize from Tony streams who like hang out in my streams now. I'm like, yeah, I stole you. And we're so different. So I'm like, the fact that you like my streams and his streams is hilarious, and I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's something to be said about that too, and not copying and being true to yourself. And the reason I bring that up is because I watch a variety of shows, and just because I'll just use older shows, but just because I love Breaking Bad doesn't mean everything has to be a gritty, like,
yes,
drama. Like, I also want to watch Letterkenny and just laugh, or I want to put on She-Ra and just enjoy a nice, fun remake of a cartoon from my childhood. Like, I watch different things, people watch different things. So like you said, like, it goes back to, I wanted to get back to that whole like building communities, because another thing you said I think is important, that is awesome to bring up, is doing things with other people that you show different facets of yourself. While I don't interact with my stream in a very older brother, younger brother, like sibling rivalry sort of way, one of the people I stream with, Zonovich, that is our dynamic. And I can showcase this, you know, this shit talking, this back and forth dynamic when he is co-streaming with me, or when I do Phasmophobia with you and Tony and Izzy, I can showcase different things. So I think back to what we talked about at the start, to kind of loop back, that's where collaboration also comes in, because you're true to yourself, but you're not going to show every facet of your personality. But collaborations and doing different things helps us be able to show maybe a different facet of ourselves, which is also kind of why I do the podcast too, because it lets us talk a little deeper about streaming and things like that. You can talk a little bit about streaming on your channel, but unless your channel's focused on streaming and like the ins and outs of it, these are normally not things that most people would talk about.
Sure.
Or at least at the depth.
Unless you're me and you're at your wit's end and you're stream, why? But yeah, no, that's a great analogy. I love that analogy. Just like TV shows. I don't know why I've never quite thought of it that way, but that's so perfect. So fantastic.
Awesome. Kind of line things up before we get into the Q&A section. For those of you who are listening to this in an audio format or on YouTube, the Q&A sections come out separately as 0.5 episodes. And I compile those together with other streamers. So you can catch the Q&A as a special episode there. But for the kind of the rapid fires before we move into that, just little palate cleansers. Do just something different each time, but we always start with a couple food ones because they're interesting to me. And my stream is too focused on food, even when we're not cooking food. Is a Pop-Tart a ravioli?
What makes a ravioli a ravioli? I don't really know.
I'm positing that question to you because I've gone deep into this.
I think if you boil it, then yes.
If you boil a Pop-Tart, then it becomes a ravioli. So the cooking preparation, because my description is if a ravioli is 2 layers of dough with something in the middle, then I guess you could consider a Pop-Tart a ravioli. For anybody who's not in the States, I've come to discover through streaming, you might not have Pop-Tarts. They're sugary pastries you put in the toaster.
Yeah, they're like hand pies.
They're like hand pies injected with extra sugar. But yeah, so I guess if it's the layer filling layer, then yes. But I feel like there's too many things like that. And if it's the crimping, because you crimp the edges, then I guess it could be ravioli. But to me, it's not a ravioli because it's not made of pasta, and I feel like that's the kicker. But I always like the Pop-Tart is not food, trick question. Fair enough. That's also a valid point. Next food question before we get into the other rapid fires. If you bake 2 separate lasagnas and then you take the lasagnas and you stack them on each other, is it 1 lasagna or is it 2 lasagnas?
It's 1 mega lasagna.
1 lasagna. That is the highest percentage of 1 lasagna. I feel the crust separates it. I feel like I get the cake analogy and everything. I feel like it's still 2 lasagnas. But this is about your essence.
I mean, if you're cutting it as 1 though, it's a mega lasagna. It's a mega lasagna.
That is the consensus, but I always ask it. I feel alone in my 2 lasagna land.
Because the top of it is usually melty and gooey, so once you put the other one on top, it's gonna seal together and no longer be 2.
That is an interesting point. I feel there's a crust that delineates the 2, but regardless, I don't want to get into the lasagna debate. Not a rapid fire question. It's about me collecting data points. Kind of more tied to the games you played. We usually do a variety of things. Instead of doing like a smash pass, because you do a variety of games, I'm still going to basically ask the most important question in any game, not how you beat it, not your build, not your style of approaching the game, but who you romanced. And looking back over the last few years, the games you played, Skyrim. Who did you romance in Skyrim?
I romanced, oh my gosh, help me out. I'm like, what did my brain do? I romanced, nope, that's Dragon Age. I was like, Liliana, nope, wrong game. Who did I romance? Was it the vampire? I think it was Serena.
All right.
No, yeah. No. Oh God. I don't remember.
All right. Well, that's important. You can't.
Wow.
You can't romance.
I was really focused on building my house. I didn't know you could like build a house, and I got really excited about that. In
fairness, in Elder Scrolls Online, my main focus and my focus in 5 was also on my housing. So being married to design is also a fair choice.
I don't remember if I got married.
Maybe you did.
Dang, I'm disappointed in myself.
Let's go with one that I feel like is a little more recent and easier. Dragon Age Origins.
Yes.
Who are you romancing in that, or who did you romance when you played that?
I am romancing Liliana. It was really hard toss-up between her and Alistair. And I let my chat choose, and they chose her, but I'm kind of disappointed because Alistair has the best himbo energy, and he was really wooing me. You know, he was really trying. And I think there's actually a really great clip where I'm like, oh, but I like Alistair. He's got himbo vibes. I am marrying Tony after all. Like, but
Alistair's a good mix of himbo and emo, and I do love that about him. He was my romance. Was Alistair on my first playthrough?
See, I'll never know.
Liliana's still a solid choice. Stardew Valley. Do you avoid romance, or do you have a romance when you get in Stardew Valley?
Sebastian just became my boyfriend.
Okay, Sebastian. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then this one's not romance because it'd be a little weird on the romancing front, a little too furry. But Animal Crossing: New Horizons is another game that you have a lot of hours in. Who is your favorite? Who is your dreamy? Who is your number one villager pick? Whether they're in your village yet or they're not in your village yet, who's number one at the top?
I think for purely aesthetic reasons, I haven't played in a long time. I keep going flip-flopping with playing it nonstop and not playing it for 6 months. But for purely aesthetics, Judy.
Good choice.
She's a little, yeah. But I did do a vacation home for that adorable little blue goat whose name I can't think of.
Oh,
He wanted a theme park in his house, and it was so cute. But I can't remember his name.
I forgot his name too, because before the new expansion, back when the game was new, the first couple villagers you get have really crappy houses. They don't have their like full scale houses. And though he was one of the new villagers and I liked him, I had to kick him out. I had to kick him out because his house was
ugly.
Ugly house, yeah. And then try as I might, I just ended up with grumpy villagers. That it's an old man retirement home on my island now because I apparently.
Oh my god, I love that for you though.
Like Avery's too good.
I can tell you my least favorite villager. I thought I've got that. We have all got that.
Oh yeah, Rocket. But what's yours?
Ugh, Naomi. Ugh.
I've never had Naomi, but I know Naomi.
She pissed off all my favorite villagers. She got in fights with all of them. Her house was ugly. Her dress was ugly, and she wouldn't move.
That was Rocket for me. I did not like Rocket's aesthetic. Did not like Rocket's house, and I just couldn't get. It took me forever to get rid of Rocket. But I did discover what I never liked the muscly villagers, but then I discovered one. His name is Antonio, and I just have to take a moment to shout out Antonio. He's an anteater, and when I found him on the island, he said that I was his swole mate. And he said that we could pump up our friendship. And then I gave him a little muscle suit, and he never doesn't wear his little muscle suit. So I usually hate anteaters and the jocks, but yeah. It's just
got you, though.
It's just him and my old men. But no, those are kind of our rapid fires, the romances and favorite villagers.
Okay.
Before we move into Q&A, I'm just curious. Go ahead and shout out your channel, your schedule if you currently have one, things you have coming up, anything that you want to shout out like that, where you're at in social media and stuff for people to find you who are going to watch this later or listening at home.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitch at DaydreamTV_. I'm currently streaming Thursdays through Sundays at 11 a.m. Pacific time to usually anywhere between like 3 to 5 p.m. So a real spread of time right there. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. If you just type in Daye Hutton, you'll find me at Daye. And I think that's pretty much it. I've got... Soon, I have an episode of a show called Mystery Incorporated coming out. It's Scooby-Doo, and we've been waiting forever to release it, and it's finally happening. Mystery Incorporated on YouTube.
Awesome. So definitely check out all of those things. Check out Daye when they are live. Thank you so much for being here, for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Again, that's DaydreamTV_. Make sure you drop a follow. Make sure you check them out on all social medias. Thank you again, Daye. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. Next week, we are going to have on Nordenheim. Nordenheim has been branching into more variety with Skyrim and stuff, but they are predominantly an Elder Scrolls Online streamer who focuses a lot on housing and things like that.